This summer, the Maritime Heritage Centre celebrated its 20th anniversary. The centre opened to the public on June 5th, 2004, and is proud to be here welcoming the community in 20 years later. On June 1st, when we invited the community in for our celebration event, we asked them to tell us about their experience here, about the history as they remember it of this building, and how it came to be in this community. So today we're going to share with you some of those stories that we've collected, and you can follow along with how this place came to be.
It goes back quite a ways into the late 1990s and into the 2000s. I started working on this project in the early 2000s. At the time, I was the third president for our Rotary Club, and we were looking for a place that we could develop and clean something up, and also end up with a meeting facility, a place where we could hold our meetings, because we'd changed locations almost every year for about 8 or 10 years at that point. So we were looking at something a little more permanent. Now what happened, this location was a sewage treatment plant, and the city built a new one north of town. And so this was decommissioned in the early 2000s, 1999, 1998, early 2000s. So it was sitting here with these big tanks full of water and nothing, blackberries growing up around it. So we had a look at it, and it was a larger project than we had in mind, but we thought, well, let's have a look and see what we can do with it.
So I began taking courses at Discovery Community College with the hope that I could get into an administrative assistance program of some kind. And there was a woman at Discovery Community College that was working in administration. Her name was Suzanne Grundenson. She was part of the Daybreak Rotary, and they were looking for someone to help work with a fellow by the name of Gordon Lang, who was working solely on the Maritime Heritage Project.
When we moved here, I remember you'd come down the hill before this was here, and they had the sewage treatment plant, and the smell would be coming blowing off the, and all the houses up above were very nice views, but they weren't very valuable houses because of the smell. And then the Rotary decided to do this.
When it opened, when they decided that they were going to do something with this site because it used to be the sewage treatment plant when you first came into town, so it was really exciting when they decided to move that and make this a heritage museum. That was really cool for Campbell River.
Now I have to go a little bit number of years back, because this area was famous for bringing a typical smell in the air. And it was a sewage plant, and
that was one of the reasons why I joined the Daybreak Clubs, because they came and they were asking for donations because they needed money for the roof, I remember, and so I donated to that, and then a few years later we decided to join because of this fantastic building.
We heard about the plans from the Daybreak Club to change it and to. So there was quite a fundraising, and we were, as the Noon Club, more or less on the sideline. But the more the project progressed, we got a little bit more involved and supported them also financially and also with labor, what we did.
When that was first brought up, we all blinked like a frog in a hailstorm, thinking, "What are you talking about?" And it just fell right into place. Nobody said we can't do that. Everybody was upbeat. It was all Rotarians. I can only speak to the Rotarians that came here. Everybody was so upbeat about putting their day in or 2 days in or months in or hours in just to make sure it worked.
So at the time, it was going to cost the city about $150,000 to dismantle it. And so they gave us that money as sort of seed money to get the project started. So that's what we started. We started by getting a set of plans drawn up and engineers working on it, to see what we could do with it. And one of the ideas that came up was to have it as a Maritime Heritage Centre, because the big tanks in this building would be ideal for various rooms, which we had. So we started dismantling the infrastructure around here. And we had to be very careful because there's still active sewage coming to this location. All the city sewage comes here and then goes out in the new main line out to the sewage treatment plant. So we had to watch where we dug and things we disconnected because you know what you're going to find.
But everybody's real estate improved in value too,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden they had these beautiful views and no smell.
Yeah.
What a concept! Because that was the foundation of this building, are treatment tanks, big
Yeah.
cement treatment tanks.
Yeah.
So they look at all that concrete. What are we going to do? We're going to move it out, or are we going to
That's
build
right.
a foundation on it? What an idea! What a thought! Thinking outside the box, turning a sewage treatment plant into the Maritime Heritage Centre.
So the first probably 2 or 3 weeks we spent draining the tanks and pressure washing it all. And luckily one of our members sold chemicals for degreasing and decontaminating concrete. So we sprayed everything with that and then washed it again. So we ended up with really good, clean concrete construction. And then we started cutting holes. We had to cut holes in all this foundation to put in doors and windows and that sort of thing. And all the walls in the sewage treatment plant were 12-inch reinforced concrete walls. So for about a month, crew worked with these big diamond saws with huge diamond blades, cutting through this 12-inch concrete, cutting all the doors and windows out. And luckily, each one of these pieces probably weighed close to a ton or a ton and a half. The tanks, as you see them now, were quite a bit deeper. They were about another 8 foot deep into the ground. So these big slabs we just pushed into the holes and then put gravel on top of that and then poured the cement. So that was one of the major projects in getting it to the point where we could start building on top of it. Was getting all of these drained, cleaned, and all these holes and everything cut in the concrete.
So at the end of 2002, entering into 2003, they were getting to the point where the building would be ready to be moved into, and that they had to have somebody in the building because of the insurance that they had to take out on the building. It had to be occupied. So Gordon Lang and myself moved into the building in December 2003.
Yeah, some of the things that sort of come to mind are the involvement that the city had as well, because when we were doing the landscaping outside, we mentioned to some of them that we're doing all the turf. We were putting down turf and all the planters. And the morning we came down to do it, all the councils showed up and helped us with that, getting involved in sort of finishing off the outside, putting the turf down, and working on some of the beds and that type of thing. That was one of the things where all of a sudden you realize that they could see the value in what we were doing here, and they got involved in it.
The building was built, the outer core of the building was built, but a lot of the inside, the floors had to be finished. They did have cement, but they wanted to paint the floors. The Rotary Hall was finished, the flooring was in, but there was the installation of the kitchen, for example. My office did not have actual desks or proper computers. I was working with some very archaic equipment, and of course freezing because there was no heat or air conditioning.
I'm very impressed with what goes on here now. This is amazing, just amazing. And you have when you take on something like this in the first place, or it's even thought of, you think, is that going to work?
It was a drawing,
Yeah.
and it was they
Yeah.
saw it through.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. Yeah.
And I remember they didn't have it all funded because they did a big fundraising thing to finish off the building because they
Yeah.
didn't have. They
Yeah.
just started it, right, in blind faith that they'd have enough money to
Yeah,
finish
that's right. Yeah, for
and they did finish it. So
sure. Yeah, for sure.
kudos to them.
So we got into this project and we discovered it was a little bit more than we were anticipating, but we had stuck with it, and it took us about 3 years to get it to the point where it was nearing completion. But during that period of time, we had the largest tank was in the middle here. It was 70 feet by about 80 feet. And so we decided that in doing the internal structure of the building, that would be the room we'd use for all the displays and that sort of thing. So we were trying to figure out what would be the main display in there. And the BCP 45 name kept coming up. So we weren't sure whether we could get it or even where it was. So we looked into it and we discovered it was at the Vancouver Maritime Museum. It was still in the water. They were taking tours around Vancouver Harbor in it. And so I took a Buford Haynes, who was the shipbuilder, and 3 or 4 other members over there, and we discovered that it was sitting in the water by the Maritime Museum, and we had a look at it. And I talked to the gal who was the public relations officer. I said, what are the chances of us getting that for our building in Campbell River? So, well, no, it's going to Steveston. It's going to be in the museum down there. So there's no hope in heck. So we came back and thought about it. And Buford says, well, if we can't get the original boat, he could build us a replica of the BCP-45. That's what we wanted in there. And we really would like to have that because it had a significance on the coast here, and also it was on the $5 bill for a number of years.
Anytime anything big that happened always hit the front page news, and it's like this. You felt like you arrived. Okay, we're in the paper. This happened, you know. Just like the boat itself, of course, and the whole the boat itself coming to Campbell River was a huge event, and half the town was there waiting for it to arrive.
We progressed with the building of this building, and we got to the point where we're closing in the big window in the front of the building, and we had to know if we're going to get the BCP-45, because once it's closed in, then we'll build a replica. And during the time that we were building and constructing this building, I kept sending the Vancouver Maritime Museum photographs and information on how we were doing, the progress we were making, so they knew that it was a project that was going to get completed. So I phoned Lisa, the public relations officer, on Thursday, and I said, look, next week, Monday, we're starting to close the building in. If there's any chance of getting the BCP-45, I need to know now, because otherwise we're going to build a replica. She said, well, don't do anything until I call you back. So Friday morning, she phones me and says, it's yours for $10. So that was a highlight of my involvement with the BCP-45 and with this building.
I basically got started early on with Ron McDonald when we started to talk about getting involved in our wish to get involved with the restoration process. We came down and volunteered and found out that basically they weren't ready to start the restoration yet, and so we were asked if we would mind working on the building and the surroundings and doing what was ever necessary until the restoration began. And that was fine, which took about a year and a half, something like that. And then we finally got to the point where, under the direction of Buford Haynes, who was a master boat builder in the area and had been fishing and was well known for his experience in building boats, we came under his direction and started to look at what was necessary in order to do this restoration.
I can remember quite well that it was really a highlight when the BC-45 came to Campbell River, and I've seen it. It came in the Campbell River waters, came here by, and then later on, when it arrived, and also the skipper at that time, the last skipper, Ollie Schickheid, I have known him too, and he was also a kind of a guest, symbolic captain on the boat at that time.
But being part of that boat was very, very important to me.
And all the shipwrights that were working in the town, all the skilled that restored that boat, they all volunteered, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had that labor force that a lot of people don't realize that they wanted to give back to the communities.
We had two brothers, the Anderson brothers, Bruce and Vic Anderson, who were very, 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 especially Vic. He was a master when it came to wood building. So he was, but there was a few others also that helped as well. But I would say he would be the main person who did the work on building those.
In the beginning, it was just a matter of throwing a little bit of paint at it and we're good. The reality was that once we got started, it was very clear and very evident that it was far more significant than that. The boat was in very, very poor condition. As a matter of fact, it was felt that it was lucky to have come up from Vancouver without a major incident because of its structural integrity. So we started to look at what we needed to do and develop a plan. We needed everything, where we would to get it. We knew a number of people in town, people such as Pat Martin, and he put us in contact with Western Forest Products. We went to them and told them what we were attempting to do, and they were very generous with their wood allotment to us. It was basically unlimited clear yellow cedar.
I guess another moment too is bringing the BCP 45 back from Vancouver. We went down and we took a 75-foot sailor with us just in case we had a problem. It was called East Isle, and it was owned by Elvis Chakite, one of Odie's relatives. We went down to the Maritime Museum, and we were going to bring it back by head out of Vancouver probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a huge westerly blowing, and it was really rough. So we went and had some dinner, and I had reserved 100 feet of dock space at Powell River to tie up for the night, because we were supposed to come across, it was Ocean's Days. The next day, we were supposed to come in on Ocean Days when everything was happening here and have a ceremony at the pier. So anyways, we started up Manalapan Strait, and it was wall-to-wall white caps, and it was really windy and rough. And by this time, it's getting dark. And we took the BCP 45 under tow because it wasn't making enough headway on its own because of a lot of growth on the hull and everything else. So, and Ole Chakite, who was the skipper of the East Isle, he got seasick. And he had an ear infection, which caused his equilibrium to not work properly. And luckily, I had an experience on a friend's boat for the same radar system and the same navigational system. So I ran the boat up to Manalapan Strait while Ole went to bed in the back of the boat. And we had a camera crew from the local radio TV station. And the guy kept saying, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Because there was lots of tows all around us and boats out there at the same time. And I said, "Yeah, don't worry about it. We're okay." Because I'm used to using this equipment.
I remember seeing it being towed. I wasn't in Rotary at the time, but I remember seeing it being towed. I think it was Elvis Chakite was dragging it. There was a big, huge fishing boat and a little tiny BC 45. There's a difference in size, and they were dragging it up for that.
And I gotta say, the boat's pretty cool. Yeah, I'd never been in the boat till today. I didn't even know you could go in the boat. So, yeah, boat's pretty cool.
So we came across it, a beautiful day, sunny, calm seas. Came through Baker Pass with the BCP 45. And other boats, commercial boats that are out there fishing, realized what we were doing and recognized the BCP 45. So they started following us, and they came across. By the time we came in here, we had probably 25 or 30 boats following us into Campbell River. Came to the dock, and they had, again, a native crew there in full regalia to welcome the boat back to Campbell River. And it was kind of an interesting ceremony to see it getting back here and coming back where it spent a lot of its life.
The other major contributor as far as the wood was concerned was Tom Palin. He was also very generous in providing us what wood was necessary in order to carry on with this project. So we had some wood, and we needed to then get it milled. And I guess this is the whole story of this project. It was a community project that came through volunteers. It came through people that wanted to contribute to the restoration project. Ron Bond was another one. He was a millwright at the mill who had a sawmill down in Black Creek. He offered to take all of the wood and put it into dimension lumber that was suitable for the BCP 45. Once that was done, we were able to start, and we started to rip things apart under the direction of Buford. And as we progressed, more and more people would be coming through the doors, looking at the project. It was a project that was taking place in the early 2000s. It started in 2003, and as a result, people were coming in the doors and saying how many people they knew directly or indirectly that had been involved with this boat, and it brought back fond memories to them, and they were extremely happy with the progress that was being done on this boat.
And then when we got inside, the boat was inside, and it was time to paint it. And we had the fellow that got me into Rotary, Barry Henschel, I don't know how he knew it, he was a retired school teacher here. He got me into Rotary. He says, my uncle is in charge of the BCP 45, because it was on the back of the $5 bill. Anyway, so I was told to come down and talk with him, and he said, okay, I want you to sand from the bow here all the way around the stern back to the bow on the other side. Well, I did it with this great big sander they had, and of course with the stuff that's in the paint, I had a nosebleed every day because they never gave me a mask. Anyway, And then once that was done, I found a bunch of rotten boards standing. So we couldn't do anything with that until the boards were replaced, and then paint over them.
It was done over a number of years. It took about 3 years. There were 5 people involved. Buford Haynes was the main person. There was myself, Glenn Ashby. There was my friend Ron McDonald, Vic Anderson, and Bruce Anderson. And so the 5 of us took on this project. We would work on it from basically 7:30 in the morning till noon every day. And we finally got it done in the latter part of 2006. We were excited to find out that in the latter part of 2005 that the boat was designated as a National Historic Site of Canada, which was just a thrilling thing for all of us involved.
I think the huge one for us, and the part that I remember being very excited about, was when we were working on getting the boat commemorated as a National Historic Site. Because the boat was on the $5 bill from 1972 to 1986. It belonged to BC Packers, and in 1986, Ole Shikite found that BC Packers was not going to be keeping their boats, and he fished on the BCP 45. It meant a lot to him, and he approached BC Packers on purchasing the boat, and they agreed to sell it to him for $1, and that's what he bought it for.
I do recall that it was on the $5 bill years ago, and I've never seen one up close, and it's great to be able to touch it and see the magnitude and the size of a vessel that was built in 1927 and fully restored. I'm sure it could float today.
Well, I remember the $5 bill that the ship was on. I'm sure it was running when I first came up here, because my dad fixed the radios in the police cars up here, and I can remember going by the yachts, the ships, and seeing what was there. Because Dad, having been on the same rock, but I was only 12 when Dad retired, so it was when I was still a young kid.
And when Ole Chikite was alive, he was the last skipper on the BCP 45. When he was alive, they would have classes come down from various levels of the school, and he would sit down with them and tell them the history of the boat and some of the experiences they did as Aboriginal people in the fishing industry here and that sort of thing, and tell them some of the stories about the experiences they had on the water. So that was a really good educational piece for younger people.
It should be noted that I guess the last owner was Ole Chikite, and Ole was deeply involved in the restoration. He was a consultant to us and would remind us of what it used to be. The configuration was taken back to when the photo was taken in 1952. The boat was built in 1927, but we wanted to take it back to the configuration that it was in 1952 when the photo was taken and made it so famous. And so that was kind of a baseline.
During quiet times, Ole Shikite would come and sit in the office, and we would just chat, and he would tell me story after story of, about the boat or his life as a fisherman, or all of those different stories that you wouldn't otherwise know.
When we brought the BCP 45 back, we had it on a trailer. It was an 80-ton trailer we had on it. We brought it back into the parking lot here about 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's the only time we could take it on the highway to get it up here. And as we're backing up the building, I hadn't measured the opening in the building and measured the wheelbase of this big trailer. And it's backing up the building. I'm thinking, now if that doesn't fit in the building, we're in trouble, because we got this big boat on this trailer and we've got no place to put it. And I think we had about 6 inches on each side of the opening to get it in here. So it just worked out. Everything worked out well for that.
I'd like to take a minute and just talk a bit about Buford Haynes. He was just an amazing man, and without him, this project simply would not have happened. I hate to mention his age, but at 80 years old, he was climbing around this building like a young 20-year-old, and just giving us a lot of direction and information. And he was one of those guys that If you asked them, say, what would happen if we tried to this? Oh, well, let's try it this way and see what would happen. It wasn't do it my way or the highway. I just have the most admiration for this man that you could ever expect. And he struggled a little bit with his health at the end, but was always interested, even though he wasn't here at the very end for its completion. He was always interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it. And without him, again, I'll say this project just wouldn't have happened. An amazing man and artist.
Well, the ship from the $5 bill is very important in our history because the kids nowadays wouldn't have seen that on the bill. And the importance of it that they chose that for the bill is interesting.
It's so interesting, so interesting.
It really is, but it's, time period, what they've done to the 45, the BCP 45 is amazing. They've kept it very original where they could. Certain little things aren't period, but it's because of Transport Canada rules and having people go on board. But yeah, that's how it was done. Like, it wasn't about creature comforts. It wasn't about, high tech. It was about getting those fish out of the water and getting it to market.
I think history is important to kids to see what we were able to do in the old days that they think we couldn't do because we didn't have cell phones and computers and everything.
Keeping it authentic is important, but also interactive for people of all ages. Again, the fact that you've got a lot of descriptions that go with some of your displays, like the old engines down there. I can recall my father's 5 horsepower engine that we had back in the early 60s. So again, I think these are memories that bring back very fond times when I was a little guy.
Yeah, that's how we maintain our history, okay? Because they're not going to learn it another way. This is better than YouTube. It's it's hands-on.
It shows you how we got here. We didn't start off with big shiny boats and modern equipment. It started off very simple and made its way to where we are today.
It's such an important part of Campbell River, the Maritime. You look out and see all the boats and all the businesses that service the boats, and it's a huge part of the economy. So yeah, I grew to appreciate how much of a large part of the economy is maritime. Exactly. So it fits so well with our town.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I don't know. And you can talk to anybody that uses it. Like, holy doodle, after they leave, my gosh, what a fantastic place that was to have a reception or a gathering or whatever the heck it might be.
Yeah, and it is really an immense transformation when you realize what it was before and what it is now, and it is a function, and it is very connecting that both clubs are now meeting in the Maritime Heritage Centre.
When we designed this building, and where we had it designed, and one of the things that we asked the people to do, we wanted to have it self financing. So we wanted to have income revenue in order to maintain the building, and you won't get that just from charging fees to go in and look at a museum. So we wanted a banquet hall where we could have weddings and banquets and anniversaries and that sort of thing. We also wanted to have a meeting room, which like the Tulin room on the front, a meeting room for larger, smaller groups. Also a boardroom for the Maritime Heritage Centre board to use, but also for anybody in town that wanted to rent the room, they could. So those were the things that we designed into the building. When we got it completed, they weren't used an awful lot for the first year or two until people started having weddings here, starting having celebrations of life here. And then they heard about it and realized that was a good spot because you're right on the water. I mean, you have cruise ships coming by during the summer months, and we have balconies on the front and on the side, so during the event you can have that open up so people can go outside.
Building of all the rental space was vital to make the money that the building needed in order to survive. And it was the bread and butter, I would say, of the building. So, of course, keeping the Rotary Hall rented, the boardroom, the Tulin room. The Anderson room at that time was permanently rented to the Campbell River Genealogy Society, and they were in here until they've been moved down into another room that was built later on called the Discovery Room. And that room was actually rented permanently at one point to Weight Watchers. And that's when they needed a permanent meeting space, and then all of that went online, and the room did become available. And I know that the Campbell River Genealogy Society were very thrilled to get that room, because the Andersons room they were outgrowing it for sure.
There's a lot of history here, but the best thing for it is it works with everything else that's down here. You know, the pier and various other things they have going on here. And I think it's just weddings, holy doodle. I think after the darn thing was finished, I think there was something like 50 weddings booked, receptions to come here after. So I don't know, I think it's an amazing thing for Campbell River.
Yeah, we have our meetings every Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
Our Rotary meeting, daybreak Rotary meeting.
Right where you guys are sitting.
Out here, and
yeah.
then in the noon club
Yeah.
has their noon club on
Yeah.
Wednesdays. So we both use it that day. So it makes it very easy to
Yeah.
set up everything. And it's a pretty spectacular clubhouse for Rotary.
kidding.
You know, people come from other Rotary clubs and they look at
There's
it.
an amazing kitchen in there, and they do our breakfast for us every second Wednesday in there and for the noon club. Of course, they're catered to noon club, but you know, the kitchen used by weddings and various things like that and ceremonies.
Yeah, and then of course it is an excellent location for marriage parties or celebration of life, and also the way it is situated with just the view on the passage that is immense, interesting, and always changing the situation. It's never the same.
And any kind of event, ceremonies, you know, graduations, whatever. We had a fashion show in there one year, and they actually built a runway, and all the teenagers and from the high schools were having it. So I let them use the Tulin room to have as their room to get dressed and, you know, do their makeup or whatever they had to do and make their way. And so that was very fun to see that, and how they got that, the ramping and all the stuff. They actually made like an actual ramp and runway. I always found that interesting, because I got to see things that I could use as for future suggestions. Well, you know, this is what can be done, or this is possible. We even had people start requesting being married on the boat. Now the boat's not very big, so you can't have a whole wedding party there, but a small wedding party. You could easily, and then everybody could be out sitting in chairs watching them get married on the boat. So we had that.
But anyway, other than that, golly, it's just been very upbeat for Campbell River, for organizations. Our two Rotary clubs use it, of course, but there's many other functions going here that they couldn't have before. You know, because all we had in town was the community hall, so consequently people book that like months in advance, and if you're not on the list, you're doing something in somebody's house.
I've been here lots for a lot of conferences, a couple services, and I just got to say, it's just a great place for an event, and it's just a peaceful place to be for those other events. And everybody's, when you come, they're so full of knowledge and kind, and you can tell that the people that are here are so dedicated to the museum itself. Yeah, I just think it's a really great place for locals, because a lot of locals don't do touristy things. You have a lot of tourists in Campbell River already, and I'm sure a lot of them take part, but I think it's just a great educational...
For young people.
For young and old, and just even for locals to come out and just see a little bit of our heritage on the coast.
What impressed me most was the appreciation that outsiders had of the facility. Tourists coming in, European tourists, Japanese tourists, coming in and seeing what we have, and the stories that people were able to relate to the BCP 45 and Ole Checkite in particular, about how things came to be.
I just think it's a wonderful venue. Like, I live in Courtenay, but we come up here once a week, like just to hang out on the pier, hang out here. It's just such a beautiful spot to be.
I find it quite fascinating because every time you look in, you'll find something different that you didn't see before.
I can't think of a bad thing about the place. I really can't. It just
In
works.
the mornings, the sun coming up.
Yeah.
You
Holy
know,
cow. Unreal. Just
7:45 in the morning. It's a really good chance to get up early, and it's the one day I get up early and see the sun come up. So
it's an amazing place, and I never hear when people come from out of town to visit somebody that's having a wedding ceremony here. They just can't believe it. They're just awestruck. You know, holy cow! Look out the window, and there's the cruise ships going by, and various other things happening right there. You know, holy cow! It's unreal.
It is phenomenal what you were doing here. It is so interesting. Only my second visit, and I definitely will come back. But even this visit, we saw things that we didn't see the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't see it all in one visit.
Yeah.
You know, you start to see an area and then you meet Rudy.
Yeah.
And that's 45 minutes and he shows you all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And again, this is what had to be in the day. You know, you didn't go down to the boat store and buy 1,000 feet of rope. You had to make it. You know, you had to splice it yourself, and you had to, you know, it's gotten a lot easier.
Yeah,
but
you made that.
I did make this. I'm pretty proud of this.
Well, I think what stands out is the way that you've organized and collect all the memorabilia, including the vessel that you restored. I love coming to places like this and seeing the history and the collection of the various artifacts that you've got, and the fact that you're doing this with volunteers. That's a big plus, and it shows the commitment of the community, and I know the children are enjoying the interactive parts of knot tying and other things, so good on you. Well done.
I can't think of anybody who wasn't willing to do what needed to be done. And even the Noon Rotary, even though they didn't take on the project, a lot of those members still helped and volunteered as well, you know, and did or paid or donated or whatever. You know, they did whatever they could to also help.
Your volunteers are phenomenal. You know, when I came in the first time with my husband, we went with Bill, and he was the one who greeted us today. And it's like, oh, I know you, because we know nobody in Campbell River. And now Rudy, you know, you'll recognize him again. And that's what I told him. I said, you need to teach this stuff. Like, you have to teach other people how to make this, because I'm going home to make one of those.
And what is that called?
This is the Monkey's Fist.
Monkey's Fist.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, the lady at the front door that gave us a free donut.
That's right. Yeah. But
I can't give enough credit to all the people that were committed to this project and what they did to make things happen. The amount of blood, sweat, and tears, I guess you would say.
You cannot say too much about the volunteers. That is so immense, so important what they do. People for years that they do excursions on the boat, excursions for the museum. So I think it is still a really very important addition to the community to have it here.
They are the backbone, and they're doing a phenomenal job.
And behind the scenes people. I mean, a lot of museums you go to and they've got something that they found on a beach and they throw it on a case and it's there. These guys have taken these items and they have brought them back to life. Like, they are buffed up and cleaned and fixed, and it's the way they were built and not the way they ended up on the beach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really special too, and that takes a lot of time.
But I took that as my job to be the same way. And it didn't matter if I had a 9-to-5 job. If I had to be here at 6 in the morning to open the doors for somebody, I came at 6 in the morning. And sometimes I stayed late at night, but it was I would have to say it was a labor of love for all of us. We all became so committed to making this, you know, come true, to be the building that they dreamt it should be, and for the public and for, you know, for the boat and all of those things.
It's been an amazing thing for Campbell River, and I think it's put Campbell River in a lot of senses on, you know, people come to visit. Where's the Maritime Heritage Centre? You know,
Yeah, very hands-on, because we would have lost interest if we were just sitting around a board table and somebody was just, pointing to a picture. It's the experience that is the important part, I think, of the whole museum.
I think, got a great bunch of people that are here, and yeah, it's a wonderful facility, and I'd recommend it for everybody to come see.
Our mission here at the Maritime Heritage Centre hasn't changed that much. We're still here to promote the educational and social history alongside the preservation of artifacts that celebrate our maritime heritage in this region. We're really focused on these things in what we do today and in our vision for the future. We're doing more programming now than we have in recent years. We've got school programs coming in all the time, school kids enjoying being on board the BCP 45 and experiencing the maritime heritage of this community. We've got lectures and film nights and knot tying workshops and a lot of things to engage the public.
The building is built to last, the boat is built to last, and I just hope that the way it's being used, I think it's very good that the people, the public come in and have a chance to use it, because it needs that. When we first built that kitchen, what we did, we talked to some of the caterers and said, like, what do you need for catering? Yeah, so rather than building something and then not being able to use it. So they came in and gave us all the information we needed to build the kitchen properly so it could be used. Well, now we put some additional things in there, like a dishwasher and a refrigerator, so they can actually prepare food right there. It's big enough now they can prepare the food. So I hope that things like that will grow as time goes on, where we can get more people coming in and using the building, because that's why it's here.
I know that there was a lot of people involved at the very beginning in terms of putting it together, but the growth in the number of people and the number of different people that have come into the organization over time is probably the biggest change.
Going forward, we're really going to focus on our values of customer service, of heritage preservation and education, of the visitor experience, and of respect and knowledge translation. By focusing on these 4 areas, we're hoping that we can enhance the experience that people have in this center and keep it going forward as a relevant and important part of this community.
So, and then over the years, some of the huge artifacts like the Gardner engine that got donated. When we got the call that we had this engine that was being donated by a man who had passed away, and his wife said he fully had it reconstructed. It cost him over $10,000 apparently, and it was the old Mill Bay Ferry engine. And when I asked him how much it weighed, I kind of had a little bit of a okay. So I had to make some calls and say, we have this engine. Of course, everybody was saying, yes, we want it, but not realizing what was going to be involved to get it. So, of course, a flatbed was needed, and many, many people, because this thing weighed, I can't even remember how much it weighed. It's probably mentioned in some of the detail, but it took over 7 or 8 men to move it into the building, to push it into the building, and to get it in its location. And it's never left that location. No surprise.
We're also putting a lot of work into the rental side of the organization, which is what generates the revenue that keeps this place going. So by having all the weddings and the celebrations of life and the business meetings that are going on in this building, it allows us to keep the doors open for the museum, and it allows us to have all those programs to welcome people here to learn more about this history.
So I think one of the biggest things was just getting people to know what was here and to get using it. And we had a lot of volunteer work happen over the period of building this. Like for instance on the boat, we needed a lot of yellow cedar for the planking on the boat. And once people saw what we were doing with the boat and we're going to get it completed, they started donating things. So all the lumber for the boat was donated by Weyerhaeuser. We needed 8,000 stainless steel screws to the planking on the boat. That was supplied by the mill. So people kept hearing about the project, can have a look at it, and they said they want to get involved. So they were helping supply. So for probably the first couple of years we were open, it was a building process again, getting all the displays made and place. Bob Somerville had quite a large marine museum, basically, in his optometry office, and he donated that to us, all that stuff. So over the first couple of years, it was just nice to see people get involved and come in and say, look, I've got something that belonged to the BCP 45. I've got the original anchor, and that kind of stuff. All this stuff started coming out of the woodwork.
We hope to see you soon at the Maritime Heritage Centre, whether it's as a museum visitor or whether you're here for a event of some sort in one of our many rooms. We also welcome people into our programs or as volunteers if you're interested in learning more about the organization and being a part of what we do here. Find out more about what's going on by following us on our social media channels, on our website, or just stop in and say hi.
And thinking back, if we hadn't decided to take on this project, there'd just be a vacant lot here, because they had no idea what they wanted to use it for. They had a liability here, which is now turned into an asset for them, the city. So if we hadn't taken the challenge to take on the building, we would have nothing here except the parking lot on a beautiful stretch of land right on the water. This lot's probably worth over $1 million, just the lot itself.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We'll be back. We'll be bringing our grandkids.